Well, hello. Hi, Karen.
Hi. It's really great to see you. So we are here as two of the co-founders of XR Women. We have known each other for a very long time, and I am delighted to be here as one of the many members of the XR Women community participating in the GatherVerse She Summit. And I thank Christopher Lafayette and the GatherVerse team for welcoming us and for what an excellent job they've done in making this opportunity for us to hear women's voices as part of the superhero engine GatherVerse She Summit 2026. So, Sophia, as I said, we've known each other for a very long time, and I think we can almost call ourselves industry veterans at this point. I've been in the industry for 10 years this year, and you have been in maybe even a little bit longer. And you've worked at companies producing XR. You have worked in military context. You are currently working with the World Bank, and you are now doing an MBA at the Kellogg School of Business. And I want to ask you if you can talk a little bit about how your experience of starting this MBA has allowed you to reflect on the XR industry and all the ups and downs you have seen along the way and where we are with that technology now.
Yeah. Well, first I'll say one of the things that I love about being in this industry is that I get to learn about all these different industry sectors as it relates, like through the lens of the technology. And I feel like going to Kellogg and starting my MBA program there has allowed me to do that even more because I am the only one in my class that has the experience I do in my sector. So I think I'm the oddball out there, but in a great way, because it's just so rewarding to be able to reintroduce this technology to people in my program. And it's more fun to do it now because people actually have a vested interest in the technology. They've either seen it before through gaming context, through their kids, or through a professional context, and some time in the timeline of the work that they've done, and they've had some exposure to it. And so it's really, really cool to be in a time where people are actively asking to learn more about the technology. Whereas 10 years ago, when we first started in this industry, and then even before that, I'm sure we were educating people on what the term VR and AR and XR was, while also telling them why they need it. So it's a little bit easier to do that now and tell that story. And it's definitely really, really cool to be able to introduce the technology to the class as it relates to the work that they're doing, and seeing a lot of inspiration come about from the conversations that I'm having.
That's great. That's really great. And I know that we've talked before about the ways that we see XR sort of creeping into the lives of the general public in a lot of different ways, and including things like with immersive cinematic experiences like Cosm, where we went to see The Matrix together. And I wonder if you could dive into that a little bit more deeply. You have such a great view of the industry. You've interviewed so many people in so many aspects of this industry, and you sort of see what is going on in a very broad way. So what do you think about the ways that the technology is being adopted, even if it's not very obvious?
Love having this conversation, and we had a great one about this prior to this call. And I actually, if you go on my LinkedIn, I posted something about this. I think it's one of my last couple posts from an interview that I did with a friend, Mohammed Hafez. And a couple of things. First and foremost, in terms of large scale adoption, I mean, people always ask about it, but I think they're mainly talking about it from a consumer lens, consumer perspective, because that is what is easily accessible in terms of understanding, where the technology is on the spectrum of adoption. However, what we don't see are things behind the scenes in the enterprise setting. You see it a lot in definitely the military when we talk about training and simulation. The DoD is building what's called a synthetic training environment, which is basically a replica, a digital twin of the entire world, of which they can train in. And then you see it a lot in manufacturing, Industry 4.0, anything where it just makes more sense to view something in a 3D realm, and that cuts costs and makes things even just a little bit easier. There are case studies with Walmart and Accenture that were buying like 50,000 headsets. And I'm sure they're continuing to experiment with that as well, and especially as content creation has become more democratized and easier and cheaper. There's no reason why entities like that would quit when it's just becoming easier and easier to do when they've already invested so much. The second thing I'll also say is from a consumer perspective, is that there are lots of ways that we are already using the technology that we don't even realize, such as any time you use a filter on social media, for example, even on your face, even if it's not necessarily adding bunny ears or eyelashes and those things like that, like any type of filter, like, is augmented reality. And then obviously placing objects within a space, furniture, IKEA, Amazon, even Google has these built-in features. That's augmented reality. It's device-based AR. And also, I want to say that, and we talked about this a little bit, the context of when we speak about immersive technology, I think just needs to shift a little bit. It's obviously easier. People know the terms AR and VR, so it's easier to kind of start the conversation by mentioning the technologies in those contexts. But it's not just, first of all, it's not just headset device-based experiences, right? Where we did a lot of work in promoting the capabilities of WebXR, the idea of being access immersive environments and objects within 3D spaces, and we meet there all the time in our spaces in Verbella and Frame and Arrival Space and others. But talking about XR and kind of shifting away from that to this spatialized context of what does that actually mean, right? We talked about 3D and just basic immersive experiences. Being on the phone, being on the web. And I even talked about spatial in terms of geospatial technology, right? Being able to do spatial anchors within a space. I mean, we need this GPS system to be able to do that, to be able to have this 3D augmented context within the real world. So all of these things are very, very important components of spatial immersive realities. So I would urge people to in the industry, especially when you're talking about this technology, talk about it in this holistic sense, so we can have people have the understanding of why this technology is important now and will continue to move forward and grow. I mean, even Uber is a spatial contract, right? Getting out of the car in Uber, it knows the velocity at which you're traveling and when you're leaving the car, and so that is, again, a capability that we adopt into the immersive visual spaces context that we're talking about.
That's great. Thank you for that, Sophia. We just have a couple of minutes left. And so I want to kind of wrap up on talking about the relationship between the sort of industry insiders. And I think there's a way in which we consider ourselves very much as part of the XR industry. And a lot of the work that we do and the work that we do with XR Women is meant to help bolster this industry and to make it better, make it a better place to be. But there seems to be sometimes a little disconnect between the ways that the adoption is taking place and what's going on in the industry. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I guess first we spoke a little bit about there is a disconnect specifically in the roles in the industry and what we expect from industry insiders, right? What the terms that we are kind of looking for, the keywords and roles and responsibilities for people in our industry when we're going out to look for new opportunities versus enterprises and big companies that are hiring for these roles. And I've talked to recruiters about this issue, and there is a disconnect between our expectations of what we're looking for, and then enterprises and other organizations that are looking for people with our expertise. They don't know how to get in touch with us because there's a mismatch in potentially where they're looking, but specifically the role titles and descriptions and all of that. And it's hard. So it's hard for that connection to happen sometimes for companies that are not inherently in the space. And so I think that's actually a lot of the work, kind of like the indirect work that XR Woman does, and kind of highlighting the talents and the knowledge in the space, and kind of fills in that gap of helping organizations and entities outside of our space kind of connect with that knowledge.
That's right. Yeah, no, I think I would agree that we're bigger and more visible as a group than we are necessarily as individuals. There's power in community and in gathering together, and we need to make sure that we are reaching out from within this bubble inside XR and connecting with all the other industries who have so much to gain from XR technologies and already are starting to try to do it. They're interested in it. And it's creeping into our lives, and I mean that in the best possible way. Sophia, I want to thank you again. It was really a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to take part in GatherVerse, and we look forward to the next session, which I will be moderating, and there will be many more members of our community there. So best of luck to you in your MBA, and continuing to be an advocate for XR and spatial and immersive technologies, and continue on your journey.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you.